Hey everyone, a very good evening to all of you guys. Welcome to the Finance Current Affairs session. So the first Finance Current Affairs guys for today is RBI grants SRO status. Now what is SRO? Self-Regulatory Organization status in the financial market to the Finance Industry Development Council, right? So this is the particular entity which got a SRO status here, Finance Industry Development Council, right? So basically this is for the NBFCs and the non-bank lending sectors. So RBI has formally recognized the FIDC as the SRO for the NBFCs and the non-bank lending sectors here, right? So the whole responsibility to promote discipline, compliance, standards, enforcing standards and compliance, ethical practices, this particular organization will be overlooking related to the NBFCs and the non-banking entities. Now this can be important, right? This can be an important news for you all. RBI eases rules on banks overseas perpetual debt. So recently I have covered this in the circular session as well, if you guys remember, related to the perpetual limit, perpetual debt instrument limit under the capital. So can you guys tell me about the limit of the PDI? It was 1.5%, right? It is eligible to be included in the AT1 capital. However, the limit was 1.5%. So please do remember the limit. This can directly come in your examination, 1.5% of the risk weighted assets. Right? RBI permits working capital loan to the manufacturers using gold as the raw material. So we have again discussed this in the RBI circular. Usually for buying gold and silver, RBI is not giving any kind of lending. Banks are not giving any kind of lending because of the RBI restriction. However, if you are taking loan for the working capital purpose, you need gold and silver as a raw material. Then you can avail the loan from a bank, right? However, the bank needs to check that you are not acquiring or holding the gold and silver for investment or speculative purpose, right? The next one, ADB Asian Development Bank revised the financial year 2026 ka growth forecast as 6.5%. So for FY 2026 and for FY 2027, the estimation of the ADB is the same, only 6.5%. Okay, 6.5%. Next, if we talk about the monthly review of the accounts of the Government of India up to August 2025. So recently they have released this particular data. This is up to the August 2025 month. So the government total receipts stood at 12,82,709 crore, which is close to 36% of the budgeted estimate of the entire financial year. Whereas if I talk about the expenditure, then it was 18,80 crore, right? 18,80 crore, 800 something. So we can see that the total receipts are quite less than the total expenditure as of now. RBI constitutes a 6-member payment regulatory board. So the PRB is now active. There are 6 members in it and the RBI governor is the chairperson of this PRB, and this particular PRB is going to replace the BPSS, which is the Board for Regulation and Supervision of the Payment and Settlement System. So earlier we used to have a Board for Regulation and Supervision of Payment and Settlement System. Now it will be replaced by the PRB, and PRB needs to meet at least twice a year. Okay, so they need to meet at least twice a year. If we talk about the GST collection of September 2025, then it is 1,89,000 crore, which is up by 9.1% year on year basis, right? It is up by 9.1% year on year basis. The GST collection is 1.89 lakh crore. right? So it's still in the uptrend. However, we have seen the impact of GST 2.0 as well, rationalization of slabs, which recently got the approval from the finance ministry. Next is BOB, Bank of Baroda, and IIFL Finance enter into the co-lending partnership for the gold loans. So they both entities have entered into a co-lending arrangement, right? I hope you guys remember the co-lending direction as well that we studied recently only. So both these organizations have entered into a co-lending arrangement for gold loans specifically. Tata AIG ties up Equitas Small Finance Bank for the insurance distribution. Now this is an insurance player and this is a small finance bank. We can call it as a bank assurance, right? Bank assurance. Now what is bank assurance? It's nothing but combining insurance as well as banking. It's an intersection of banking as well as insurance. So insurance companies are using the front end of the banking channel, the banks, to sell their insurance products, and this partnership is called as bank assurance basically. So these two entities have participated here. Axis Bank launches gold backed credit on the UPI facility as well. So Axis Bank has collaborated with the Free Charge. They both have introduced a new feature. This is India's first gold backed credit line, that too with UPI. So can be very, very important for your examination. Right, in collaboration with the Free Charge, they have launched the India's first gold bag credit line, that too via UPI. So the customers can easily avail the credit via the UPI line as well. Again, I think we have covered this news, so this is repeated if I talk about in the RBI circular, or I have covered this in the last session as well related to the RBI incentive scheme, right? So RBI is offering incentive just to tackle the problem of the unclaimed deposit and inoperative accounts. Please do remember the timeline. It is of 1 year, and 1st of October to 30th September 2026 is the timeline. You don't have to remember the payout rates because that's more of an internal in nature rather than a conceptual thing, right? Then SEBI Mitra platform, we all have studied this in the month of June. If I'm not wrong, June or July. We have studied the Mitra platform in a very detailed manner. This is just there to trace the inactive or unclaimed mutual fund folios, right? If your mutual fund is inactive or maybe it's unclaimed, then the retailers or any person can go to the Mitra platform and claim the respective mutual fund. So Mitra stands for Mutual Fund Investment Tracing and Retrieval Assistant. Full form is very, very important here. The purpose and the full form is very, very important here. And it is now completely in service from 1st of October 2025. That's why I have covered this. Otherwise, we have already covered this particular Mitra platform in a particular video in a very detailed manner. So it's nothing but a joint effort only of CAMS and K Fintech. These are the registrar and transfer agents, right? RTAs. Okay. Then SEBI launches Development of Industry Association, DIA. Development of Industry Association. So SEBI has launched this particular scheme to strengthen the MSME clusters. Now this is aimed at fortifying the industry association to get a better support for the MSMEs basically, right? So the name of the scheme is Development of Industry Association. It was launched at the National Conclave in New Delhi recently. RBI Bank, RBL Bank enters into bank assurance tie-up with LIC. So आज बैंक assurance से related दो news हो गई हमारी यहाँ पे है ना, एक तो BOB और टाटा AIG की, और उसके बाद RBI बैंक एंड LIC की, right? So they too have entered into a bank assurance partnership. Again, LIC can sell the insurance product via RBL bank. Why these kind of products come? Because usually what happens is बैंक्स के पास कस्टमर फुटफॉल होता है और इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज के पास इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसीज होती है. सो यहाँ पे क्रॉस सेलिंग होती है बेसिकली, राइट? क्रॉस सेलिंग होती है बेसिकली. नेक्स्ट इज एन अमेजिंग इनिशिएटिव लॉन्च बाय जोमैटो कंपनी. Zomato launches NPS based retirement model for the gig workers. So basically their delivery partners are their gig workers. So Zomato has launched a NPS based retirement model for the gig workers. A part of their income will go to the NPS, and in the same manner it will be organized by the PFRDA only, right? Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. So that's the news of 1st of October. You don't have to go to too much detail of this particular news, just remember the headline of it and the crux of it. Then at the end of this particular September month last week, there was a decline in the foreign exchange reserve reaching to 700 billion, right? 700 plus billion were the new balance of foreign exchange reserves. Then RBI allows banks to fund M&A can be important. So this is a kind of revival of the corporate credit. Why? Because RBI has now allowed banks to fund the mergers and acquisition. Let's suppose two companies are merging, right? What do you mean by merger? They are forming a group entity. Let's suppose A and B are merging, or maybe B company is acquiring C company, that's acquisition. So that's called as merger and acquisition. Now, in order to do mergers and acquisition, there is a need of finance. There is a need of money. So RBI has decided to allow the Indian banks to finance the M&A as well, involving Indian corporates. So now if the Indian corporates are merging or they are making an acquisition, they can get the finance from the Indian banks. This is a long awaited move from the RBI. Earlier it was prohibited. Now it is completely allowed. Right? So this will definitely drive the capital market lending by the banks. It will definitely boost the corporate credit as well. RBI to reduce the bank capital requirement via revised Basel III norms from April 2027. So from April 2027, RBI is going to implement the revised Basel III norms, right? Remember the date, remember the concept of revised Basel III capital adequacy norms for the commercial banks. What they are doing is they are just reducing the capital requirement for many banks. So if they reduce the risk weights, definitely it will be helpful for the banks because they need to maintain less reserves as compared to the earlier one, right? This will effectively reduce their risk weighted assets, and if the risk weighted assets are reduced, then they need to maintain lesser capital here, right? It will be implemented from the April 2027. Next is SEBI's new UPI measure to strengthen the investor survey, and we have covered this particular news in multiple sessions. So basically it's nothing but a verification tool, right, related to UPI. So what are the initiatives? First initiative is UPI handle, @valid handle, if you guys remember, right? We have covered this on the very same day जब ये SEBI का circular आया था. फिर उसके बाद SEBI check tool है. There is a SEBI check tool with which you can check the authenticity of the UPI ID of the bank account, right? And then there is a visual verification clue as well. When you visually see it, you will be seeing a green thumbs up icon inside a triangle. So that confirms that the UPI handle, the UPI ID is validated or is valid. Then the mandatory rollout and transition. So it's effective from 1st of October 2025. That's why I have covered this particular news here in this today's session. Next is Razorpay and Yes Bank have launched RBI compliant biometric card authentication. So Razorpay and Yes Bank, they have launched the RBI compliant biometric authentication card here for the online card payments. This is now will be an alternative to the traditional OTP and PIN methods. Okay, so this is a biometric authentication card which will be integrated with the access control server, plus it is AI powered to check for the risk. World Bank raises the India's 2026 financial year growth rate to 6.5. So I can say that ADB and World Bank estimates are in harmony as of now. They both are giving an estimate of 6.5% at least for the financial year 2026. If I talk about the financial year 2026, whether it's World Bank, whether it's ADB, the estimate is 6.5%. But if I talk about the financial year 2027, then ADB estimation is 6.5%, whereas World Bank estimation is 6.3%, which you can see here, right? For the 2027 I'm talking about. Again, they have projected India to remain as the fastest growing major economy. Now, next one is not related to the October month, it's related to the September month. 17 सितंबर का ये आपका FAQ सेक्शन में अपडेट हुआ था फ्रीक्वेंटली आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस के अंदर. But I personally feel that you need to remember this particular thing for this examination as well, right? So though we have covered it in different sessions, but still ये अभी आया तो मैं चाहूंगा कि आपको एटलीस्ट इसका क्रक्स पता हो. Now what is interoperable regulatory sandbox? We all know that we have RBI regulatory sandbox, we have regulatory sandbox for SEBI, for IRDAI, for IFSCA. We have definitely regulatory sandbox for different entities. Now there is a need for interoperable regulatory sandbox as well, right? And what regulatory sandbox is all about, guys, वैसे? Regulatory sandbox, it's nothing but a live testing environment in which new products and services can be tested in a controlled environment. That too without following all the rules and regulations. You will be getting relaxations related to multiple rules and regulations, right? So if I talk about a particular company which wants to test a product which is falling under the ambit, under the regulations of RBI, SEBI, or maybe IRDAI as well, it can happen, right? The product can be related to financial instrument, the product can be related to banking, the product can also be a part of the insurance industry. So it's a combination of all these three. So instead of taking the regulatory sandbox help of each and every regulatory body, why don't we have an interoperable regulatory sandbox, right? So that's what interoperable regulatory sandbox is all about. Acha, please do remember, as of now, PFRDA is the only regulatory body as of now stated here, which is not having any kind of regulatory sandbox of its own. Still, it is eligible to participate in the interoperable regulatory sandbox, right? Just give me a second. I'm just checking for any important detail for your examination here. I already told you what is interoperable regulatory sandbox, how it is different, because your product is having a regulatory requirement of multiple regulatory bodies. That's why to take approval of each and every sandbox rather than just go to the interoperable sandbox. Okay. So who can participate? Fintech companies, regtech companies, startups and other innovators can definitely participate in it. All the products can be definitely tested who are falling within the zone of one or more financial regulator which is mentioned here. Now there are two types of entities here, PR, principal regulator, and associate regulator. Let's suppose my project is majorly falling in the guidelines of RBI, right? In the directions of RBI. More of a banking product. Let's suppose it's more of a banking product, but some part of it is related to the financial markets as well. So the governance will be done by both RBI and SEBI. So RBI will be the principal regulator and the associate regulator will be the SEBI. So that's what is written here. The framework of the regulator under whose remit the dormant or majority features of the product are falling. Let's suppose majority of the features of my product is falling in RBI's territory. Then RBI will be the principal regulator and SEBI will be the associate regulator here. Right? Now how to apply for it? It's hosted by the fintech department of RBI only. Right, it's hosted by the fintech department of RBI only, and it will not be having any kind of theme. It is accepted on tap basis. It is accepted on tap basis. So as of now there is no timeline. On tap basis पे it is accepted, right? And the preliminary scrutiny, whatever the preliminary scrutiny is in the regulatory sandbox, will be done by the fintech department of Reserve Bank of India as of now. So preliminary scrutiny will be done by the fintech department of RBI. And what about the detailed scrutiny? The detailed scrutiny will be done by the PR. What is a PR? Principal regulator. If RBI is the PR, then RBI needs to do the detailed scanning. If SEBI is the PR or any other regulatory body is the PR, then they need to do the regulatory detailed scanning. Right? Yeah. And then there are certain articles of the Economic Times. I'll be discussing one particular article, and then the rest of the topics I'll be just giving you guys for a quick reading. So the first one is RBI eases the ECB norms for the NBFC. This is external commercial borrowing, an Indian entity raising money from the external countries, external sources. That's what external commercial borrowing is all about, right? So RBI has eased external commercial borrowing norms for the NBFCs, and they are now raising loan up to $1 billion or more with no fixed borrowing ceiling. So earlier it used to be 750 million per year, and now the cap has been raised to over $1 billion. So that's again a good thing for the NBFCs. So RBI has removed this particular restriction here, right? This restriction is now removed. Then RBI eases the lending norms for against the shares and IPO. So if you are lending against the shares and IPO, I'm talking about the regulated entities, I'm talking about the bank lending limits. So if they are lending against the listed shares and the IPO financing, so the earlier limit used to be 20 lakh, now it is 1 crore per individual, right? So both these news are very, very important. Both these news are very, very important, right? And if you are daily reading a good newspaper, then definitely you must have already covered it, right? So the limit, the ceiling limit was earlier 20 lakh and now it is 1 crore. Okay. So that's all for my end, from my end for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching the session, and we'll definitely connect tomorrow for the MCQ session from these finance current affairs. And there are some extra dose as well for you guys in terms of Economic Times and in terms of other related news. So I have given this in my PPT. Later on, you can download this PDF and have a quick reading of that extra dose as well. Okay. Don't ignore any kind of extra dose. Just have a quick reading of that as well. Okay guys, so thank you so much. See you soon tomorrow, same time, with a lot of MCQs related to the finance current affairs. Bye bye, take care and best wishes.